Hi, this is Dr. Culkin here to talk about Topic 5, Modern Thinking. Last week, the reading was in large part about the development of industry as well as urbanization. This week, some of the reading addresses how people began to tackle the problems that came along with industrialization and urbanization. Reform was slow to come, as social Darwinism, which applied the idea of natural selection to society, and which you may remember from History 10, dictated that the strong would survive. But gradually, reformers began to challenge this idea, arguing that the negative effects of poverty on individuals must be fought. These reformers took different approaches, some stressing the importance of religion, while others challenged the principle of laissez-faire economics, meaning the government should intervene. One influential reformer was Jane Addams, who founded the settlement house Hull House in Chicago in 1892. Settlement houses were located in poor urban neighborhoods, often inhabited by immigrants, and staffed by middle-class social workers trying to eradicate the problems found in these neighborhoods. Many were run by educated women, part of the growing number of females who were earning college degrees. Hull House offered a variety of services that were hard to come by in turn-of-the-century cities, including medical care, showers, a library, and classes in everything from English to cooking to art. For all its benefits, a settlement house like Hull House could only reach a small fraction of the people who needed help, and immigrants often resented the middle-class reformers who judged their habits and told them how to live. As you might imagine you would resent that if someone came in and said, "You're living wrong, you should do it this way." Soon there was a shift in the approach of social workers as they tried not to just help individuals, but also to study the reasons for poverty and crime in an attempt to alleviate these social ills altogether. And as we know, they weren't really successful in alleviating crime and poverty. Now, progressivism was the name given to the reform-minded age in the first decades of the 20th century, during which people in a variety of professions attempted to improve and perfect American society. It manifested in different ways, including politics, reform movements, and newly established professions. Although it took many forms, 6 characteristics defined it: concerned about the effects of industrialization, an optimism about human nature and the human ability to solve society's problems, a willingness to intervene in people's lives, a willingness to use the government to implement reforms, a belief that environmental conditions were at the core of antisocial behavior, so it didn't have to do, there wasn't something inherently criminal in someone, it was the environment in which they grew up in that made them criminal. And finally, with just how broad the reach of progressivism was, touching almost all aspects of American society. Some of the reform movements that came about during the progressive era were environmentalism, public health, the cleaning up of corrupt governments, and the final push for women's suffrage, achieved with the 19th Amendment in 1920. So that meant that women could finally vote. We're talking about women's suffrage. Now, as the 19th century turned into the 20th, mass production became more and more the norm. The rise of the automobile is a dramatic example of this trend. After Henry Ford developed a system for putting together an automobile along an assembly line, he was able to make cars more affordable to more Americans. Between 1895 and 1917, the number of cars on America's roads rose from 4, that's right, 4 cars, to 5 million. Assembly line production changed the way things were made and how products were valued. Instead of a craftsman trying to make each item unique, assembly lines aimed to make millions of products that were exactly the same. Assembly lines also decreased the need for individual skills, making it easier to replace workers. And while some workers earn more money, especially as business thrives, jobs on assembly lines could also be very dangerous, particularly as workers were encouraged to go faster and faster. Mass production and urbanization took hold, mass popular culture developed by the 1920s. Sports became a national obsession. People took to the golf course and cheered by the boxing ring. American literature flowered as authors explored the ramifications of the rapidly changing society on people's lives. The Harlem Renaissance was one of the most important aspects of this blossoming of American literature, producing authors such as Zora Neale Hurston. Other authors, such as F. Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway, left the United States and cast a critical eye on their country from abroad. The development of radio networks allowed people across the country to experience news at the same time, as well as allowing them to listen to the same music and the same shows at the same time. Movies also took off, with talkies, or movies with sound, being introduced in 1929. While regional culture still existed, and still exists, by the end of the 1920s, Americans were much more likely to be able to share experiences with people with people they had never met who were far removed from where they lived. So there starts to be sort of this national culture of people experiencing the same radio shows or the same movies or the same news events at the same time. Okay, thanks. As always, participate in the discussion board and answer the reading questions, and I'll see you next week.